there, welcome to or welcome back to No Pants Profits. My name is Richard, and today I'm coming to the port from the port of Sydney, Nova Scotia, Canada. I'm here on a Carnival ship, but today we are not taking a cruise ship excursion. We are going to Bird Island. Now, supposedly this is a tour that guarantees, May through August, guarantees you to see puffins. I've never seen puffins in real life before. Now, this is not a tour offered by the cruise ship, but if you call the Bird Island Boat Tours website, which I'll have linked below, they can arrange transportation for you to get out to Bird Island, and they basically put a tour together. We're a group of like 12, and we got a lot of No Pants fans in here today. But we're a group of like 12. We're going to go out to Bird Island. All the puffins supposedly wear captain's hats. I don't know, at least in their promotional material. I call that false advertising if I don't see at least one bird in a captain's hat. But it's about 40 minutes from the port, but they'll arrange transportation for about $50 a person. The tour's about $50 a person. So for $100, hey, you get a tour of Bird Island. So come along with me flat, meaning, you know, like my chest should be, flat and in 360. I brought the 360 as well. That'll be a separate video. And let's check out Bird Island in Sydney, Nova Scotia, Canada. My mom said that, you know, I misbehaved as a child. She's going to send me to a boarding school in Nova Scotia. She's now got Nova Scotian duck tollers. So now I've been to Nova Scotia, I guess. Let's just check. I didn't even think our thing's here. Yeah. So these are the different tours you can do directly if you wanted to. We're doing Bird Island instead, but this is just to give you an ad brewery stop. Ooh. I like that idea. Also, there's a Gray Line bus terminal here, I guess. But yeah, it's known right over there. It's got the world's largest viola, violin, mandolin, something like that. But we are going to take a ride out 40 minutes to Bird Island. Go to Bird Island and come back. This is not a ship run tour, but we got plenty of time, so we good. Leaving at 9 o'clock in the morning. All right, so we are getting on our Bird Island tour. About a 35-minute ride over here. So we're gonna jump on the Puffin Express, I think. Right here, yeah. Puffin Express. You guys will notice that the small puffin, he's wearing a captain's hat. I don't think I picked the right tour, did I? We didn't pick the right tour, did we, Puppy? A small puffin, he's wearing a captain's hat. Not sure why. Oh. Jump right here. To go. It's gonna be an interesting tour.
One up forward, one beside, and two back aft. In the case of a fire on board, it'd most likely be myself or the captain that deals with it, but the procedure is as follows. Release the clip, which is located 1/3 down from the top, and then the acronym is PASS. Pull the pin located at the top, aim nozzle at the base of the flame, squeeze two levers, and sweep from side to side. In the case of a fire in the engine compartment, we do have two CO2 canisters located on either side again, this time larger ones sitting on the floor. There's one behind that seat there. Again, in the case of an engine fire, it'd most likely be myself or the captain that deals with it, but the procedure is as follows. The captain would shut down the engine, close the 3 fire dampers. There's one located at the bottom of that pipe, bottom of this pipe, and the bottom of that pipe. They're just valves. I would then climb onto the roof and screw on 3 plastic covers on top of those same 3 pipes for more airtight seal. Yell down that I'm finished. Captain grab one of the CO2 canisters, lift it out of its holder, walk to one of the sides of the helm, put the nozzle in a hole clearly marked fire port. There's one on either side. Then the operation is very similar to a regular fire extinguisher. Pull a pin, squeeze 2 levers, let it shoot the CO2 into the engine compartment, put out a fire there. If somebody does fall overboard, we do have 4 life rings on board. One up forward, one beside, and 2 back aft. There's one behind the bathroom. Again, if somebody does fall overboard, it'd most likely be myself or the captain that deals with it, but the procedure is as follows. It would most likely be myself or the captain actually throws them a life ring, preferably one with a light. Then it becomes everybody's job to keep their eye on the person in the water, as the worst possible thing you could do is lose somebody that falls in the water. Then we could turn the boat around and pick them up. If we do have to abandon the boat, there are life jackets under everyone's seats or your neighbor's seats, and child life jackets are located in the locker up forward, clearly labeled. There's also some infant life jackets mixed in throughout.
Uh-oh. Here comes the Titanic, Captain. Are you guys father and son? He said the same last name. Yeah? Okay. That's what I thought.
He's a captain too, though.
Put on a life jacket, pull it over your head, and you tie it around your neck and your waist, as the captain is demonstrating. You don't have to be fancy with the knots, but it does have to be tight, making sure to tie the lower strap around your waist and not around the life jacket itself. We then head towards the stern of the boat, at which time I would be on the roof, undoing the life raft, which is pretty easy to do as well. Just undo the clip attached to the boat, push life raft overboard, and pull in the drag cord until the thing inflates. Then there's complete survival instructions located within the life raft itself. We board the life raft at the stern through those doors. The final thing I'd like to mention is this is a small family business, and this is actually our 53rd year running, and we get to use any of the safety equipment. It gets inspected every year, so I've yet to need it. So thank you. Have a good tour. By the way, this boat was built for us and partly by us in 2010. If anybody does have any questions regarding any of the safety procedures that I just covered, please see myself or the captain shortly after departure. And I apologize for the late departure.
And that backhoe is to bury the people they got rid of yesterday.
The orbits, the organ harvesting comes in there.
Good money in that.
You know the business.
51 years.
25,000 gross tons, up to 750 feet long, heading up to Little Narrows. Little Narrows is past Quebec in the Door Lakes. That's where the gypsum mine is located. Now the only thing of any great size comes through the Deepwater Channel are very, very small cruise ships or celebrity yachts or super yachts. Now, on the other side of the boat, the port side, we're looking at Kelly's Mountain. They call it a mountain, but really it's just a hill. Kelly's Mountain is, however, very rich in minerals. There's a limestone quarry, which is that open scar there behind us. There used to be a gypsum mine at the other end of it. There was talk of an iron ore mine or gravel mine at this end of it. And there used to be a coal mine, and some say even a gold mine, all within this end of Kelly's Mountain. Now in the foreground is New Campbellton. New Campbellton used to be the mining village. There used to be 200 families living there. Now there's only about 10 to 15 permanent families on this end, connected to the rest of the world by a 20-mile dirt road. More often than not, it gets plowed out the second day after a snowstorm. So it truly is cottage country. Most of the buildings you see on that side are summer cottages. However, it has all the same features. The lobsters walk in backwards these two funnels here on the side, backwards because their claws don't fit in first. And for the same reason, once they get in, they can't get back out, as their claws don't fit out first. Now, they're heading for the bait that we put on this metal pole here, the bait stick. Bait is usually mackerel or herring, a type of fish, and the lobster draft the oil or blood in the mackerel or herring. And after a few days in the water, the mackerel or herring loses its oil or blood, so the fishermen have to change their bait every day or every other day. That's also why you'll see gulls chasing after lobster boats. Some of the lobsters is the old bait the fishermen just throwing out. Now, some of the lobsters are making for this third funnel here into the parlor. The parlor is just a holding area. But the lobsters that make it there have a chance to get out through this little white door. This little white door is to allow the smaller lobsters, the ones that are at market size, out. Now, that little white door is held in by 4 pieces of metal, 4 metal clips. If the trap is lost at sea, those 4 metal clips will actually thrust out, allowing all of the lobsters to go free, so that no lobsters die on the trap itself. Now, the only thing that's missing on our miniature lobster trap here is where these wooden strips are on the bottom of the trap would be cement or concrete weights to weight the trap down the bottom. This orange string here on the end of the trap is where the lobster trap line. The rope heading up to the surface would be attached with a buoy floating on the surface of the water. Now, a full-size metal trap, like that one, but full-size, is about 100
All right, so it looks like we are coming up on this bird island. I'm not sure what's there. We got a good zoom on another camera. Kind of a little jungle cruisey in this boat, but yeah, we're coming up on Bird Island. We get to some narration, and maybe we're gonna. I mean, we got Puffins guaranteed, they said. So let's see what we find here.
Right, that's why you guys are out here, right? Sure. Great cormorants forever. Yeah, about that.
I started to hear a collective wrong.
Wrong.
Now, there is, however, a different type of cormorant. There's also the double-crested cormorant. He's all black as well, except he has an orange or rust-colored cheekback. Orange or rust-colored cheekback.
If you've seen a cormorant before making this tour here in North America, more than most likely it's been a double-crested. Okay, now it's getting tough. I see one great cormorant. He's moving around there with his He's got his wings semi-outspread there.
Yeah. Farthest to the left, closest to us.
Yeah.
That one?
Yeah, farthest to the left, moving around. Higher up.
Okay.
I don't know. There's one great cormorant. The rest are all double-crested. If you've seen a cormorant before making this tour, more than most likely you've seen a double-crested.
My turn.
Okay.
Let's compare the two here for a second. If you see white on the head, it's a gray cormorant. If you don't, it's double-crested. Gray cormorant is also slightly larger, while double-crested has thin tufted feathers in the back of his neck. Belly and thin white strip on his bill, other than that black. Coat, tails of penguin, and so forth.
Razorbill miniature penguin. Got it.
Saw a bunch of these as well.
Yeah, I saw a bunch. There's some puffin up high and then some razorbills. Way up high.
The final member, of course, is that boring old puffin.
Oh.
Everybody knows what a puffin looks like. Big orange bill, orange legs, white cheek pads, white crescent belly, other than that black.
There is such a puffin as a tufted, and there is a horned puffin, but they're found out in Alaska and out west, and Ian doesn't want to go to Alaska today.
Yeah.
Razorbill's up high, and puffin. Why are you up way up there?
Yeah, way up high on top.
They're sort of like me. They don't exactly love bald eagles. Not necessarily that a bald eagle will eat a puffin. He'll eat anything he can get his talons on. But the bald eagle make the puffin nervous. And when they're nervous, they'll go out on the water. Nothing keeps up with a puffin on the water except for possibly seals. But seals don't like feathers in their teeth. By the way, in all the years that I've been coming out here, I've never ever seen a bald eagle eating a puffin or a razorbill or a guillemot. I've seen them eat every other bird out here, but not those three. But those three get nervous. And when they're nervous, they'll go out on the water.
Puffin. 11 o'clock.
There's a puffin right here. By using their wings for propulsion underwater. Flying underwater. The razorbill, he's even more incredible. He can dive up to 300 feet down. Think of the pressure. That is penguin-like. Actually, it's amazing how much these elsids are like penguins if you think about it. Black guillemot rated 12. Same black and white plumage, being able to use their wings for propulsion underwater, being more comfortable on or under the water than on land, like in the cold. Elsidae family is the closest family to the penguin family. There was a member of the Elsidae family called the great auk. Went extinct about 1845 or so. It was the last flightless bird in North America. Europeans called the great auk penguin first. Of course, penguin meaning flightless bird. Huge flock of puffin at 11 o'clock, or sorry, 3 o'clock and 1 o'clock. The Elsidae family is the closest family to the penguin family. There was a member of the Elsidae family called the great auk. Went extinct about 1845. The all black ones are the males, the gray spotted ones are the females, the gray white.
Yes. So besides the shark, what's the other option? Well, the other option is orcas. Now, orcas, as I mentioned before, were killed off in the 1940s and 50s. We got some fishing here. So there are none around here really anymore at any great number.
550. That's the king. They are starving to death. A large king gray seal, he can eat up to 60 pounds of fish a day. 60 pounds of fish. For example, mackerel, cod, herring. And the government's wondering why the cod moratorium's not working. Even though there's nobody or very few fishing cod, the number of cod in the waters is just not increasing, while it might have something to do with more seals than there ever have been. The gray seal, they have sort of an anarchy system, if you will. A large male, he'll have a whole harem of females around him, and around them are the pups. They're usually the close ones to us when they're in the water, the pups. Of course, they're more curious too, but those pups, they're not as cute and cuddly as they look. Even a little pup could easily sever a man's fingers. A large male, if provoked, could take a man's life. They have vicious teeth, not unlike a German Shepherd. Of course, these guys are more defensive than offensive. But still, the activists, they forgot to mention that little fact when they posted that cute little pup around North America. they do is they stuff them. They feed them so much so that they weigh more than the adult. They're so big that they cannot fit out of the narrow nesting chamber I described earlier. Then the adults will abandon the immature in the nest and go out to sea. That used to happen about the 3rd week in August. It's been happening earlier and earlier these years. Meanwhile, back in the hole, Litto Jr. is, of course, getting smaller through starvation. But at the same time, he is maturing. By the time he's small enough to fit into the narrow nesting chamber, he is fledged to fly and catch up with the adults. Now, if only people could do that, according to a lighthouse keeper who was on the other island, midnight on the harvest moon, which is the first full moon in September, all the adult puffins will come back. And within 10 minutes, all the adults and the immature will leave together. Now, I don't know if I agree with the lighthouse keeper on this one, particularly the fact all adults will come back. All the books say is the immature will leave under the cover of darkness. The reason why I'm not certain is the immature puffin and razorbill will spend the first 2 or 3 years out at sea by themselves, solely by themselves, ranging up to 2,000 miles from these islands. 3rd or 4th year, they'll come back to the same islands, try to burrow off from the same holes where they were born. We had state-of-the-art navigation equipment, so they don't need their parents to show them how to catch fish or to show them how to fly. It's all instinct. It's all in their genes. Pretty incredible little guys if you come to think about it for a bit, huh? That looks like the end of the islands.
All right, Bobby, what were your thoughts?
I like the tour.
Yeah?
The father and son, the co-captains, they did a really good
Yeah.
job.
And we saw a shitload of puffins, didn't we?
We saw lots of puffins.
And I think it's something that if Carnival were to offer this tour, it'd be $300-400.
Easy.
Easily.
Easy, not even a question.
Easily.
And we got to see some nice seals.
Yeah.
They were fighting on the rocks.
Yeah, so I'll have to say, I'll have to give this tour our seal of approval.
Yes, the seal of approval.
This is Richard and Bobby from No Pants Profits, reminding you, don't pay Carnival's ridiculous tour prices. And then when you wear no pants, Bobby, what's the only thing you got left to lose?
Your shirt.
And also we learned that there's a great opportunity in making rubber puffins.
Rubber puffins.
No
You're
one's
the
making
one.
them. No one's making them. Yeah, they were Bert and Ernie, dad and son. If you didn't know it, you'd think they were
Yeah, probably.
old lovers. Have a great one, and do not lose your
Shirt.
bye.